and click on Format pane within there. Either way will bring up this little panel on the right. Now, this panel will bring up different options depending on which chart element you are in. And it's where we're going to spend most of our time for the next half an hour or so, because it's where we're going to go and change up all of our different chart elements. Now, the key thing that we're interested in for our chart area is where we have got our properties over here. And I think it's under the properties section like this. Yes, there it is. We've got these options here that say move and size with cells, move but don't size with cells, and don't move or size with cells. Now, at the moment, move and size with cells is selected, and that is why our chart is shrinking and growing as we filter our table. If I choose the option that says don't move or size with cells, we'll see what effect this has when I filter my table. So let me go to my items. Let me get rid of my samosa from the table, which is a sad thing. And let me get rid of some of the other ones as well. And notice that this time the chart is staying the same size. Remember that it's not actually getting rid of the slices from the chart because we told it not to earlier on. The key thing here is we're making sure that the chart always stays the same size by going into our chart area. If I can do that, yes, there we go. And going into the properties and choosing that option that says don't move or size with cells. Right, so the next thing that we have got on our pie chart then is probably going to be this chart title here. Now, most of the time, well, no, let me take that back. Some of the time, Excel will give you a default chart title. And if you want to change this, you can double click on it and then type in a new chart title. So if I put in amount item like that, we've got our brand new chart title like so. And if I click away from that, it will save that change. Now, one thing that you might decide to do is get rid of your chart title, and you can do that by just deleting it like that. But that really brings up a question, doesn't it? What if you have got a chart that doesn't have a chart title because either Excel hasn't put one in there or you've deleted it, but you want to add one in? What do you do? Well, if you want to add any chart elements to your chart, what you do is go up to the chart design menu, you go over to add chart element, and within there you'll see that there are different options for things that you could add to your chart. You will notice as we go through this that the items that are available will depend on the type of chart that you use. But anyway, we want to add in a chart title. So we go to the chart title section. I will choose to put one in above the chart. And when I do so, we get that. So it's put back in that amount heading there. Right, so let's see, what's next? Well, I suppose another thing that's quite important will be the data labels. These are the little labels that appear on your chart. And I think actually what I'm going to do is go back to my pie chart worksheet there, because I've got some fewer ones to play about with just to make it a little bit clearer. Now, with your data labels, you can do things like format them. So what I'm going to do is give them a black background, I think, like so, just to make them pop out a little bit more. Now, if you have got your data labels selected and you've opened up your format pane, you will find that over in that pane, in your options, you have got a section that lets you control what appears on these labels. So at the moment, we can see that our pie chart is showing a percentage. What we could do if we wanted to is add in the values as well, so we get that. We can add in the category name, the series name, all sorts of different things. In general, you'll want to keep it to a minimum, and in this case, I will perhaps just want to show the percentage and leader lines like that. The leader lines relate to the label position. At the moment, we have got labels shown on the inside end, but if you wanted to, you could move them about. So if I say chose best fit, like that, it will put some of them outside our chart like so. And what the leader lines will do is draw a line between the label and the slice it relates to, so that you've not got a random label just hovering in the middle of nowhere and you don't know what it relates to. Now, while we are on data labels, I believe that someone was asking me about whether you can put different values onto your column charts of things like percentages, stuff like that. Well, what I'm going to do is take the stacked column chart for this as an example of extra things that you can do with data labels. And what I'm going to do is go to Chart Design, add chart element. I'll go to Data Labels, and I'm going to add some to the inside end like that. And they're not terribly clear, so let me go and format that so that they have got white backgrounds like so for that one, and also for that one as well. Now, if we take a look at the data labels for our column charts, and we open this up in our pane, you will notice that we don't get percentages shown here. And we are perhaps a little bit limited as to what appears. There are times when what you want to appear for your labels aren't actually appearing in your label options. There's something, though, that can help you make your data labels a little bit more flexible. And this is the option that says a value from cells. What this means is you can add a cell value to your table and use that for your labels. Now, let me just show you what I mean by this. What I'm going to do first of all is get rid of one set of those labels. So I've only got the labels relating to my February figures there. Now, instead of showing me what the figure is for February, so 765 for pizza and so on, let's say that I want this to show what the total figures are for January and February. By default, the chart isn't giving me that, but what I can do is add an extra column to my table that calculates that for me. So let me try that. Let me put in a total column here. And what I'm going to say is this total is going to be the value for February for the current row plus the value for February, and it works that out for all of those rows. Now, first of all, notice that when I add that extra column, the chart has automatically added it to the chart for us, which we don't want to happen. So I can go to my chart, grab hold of that little square and change its range there so that it's only using the January and February columns as before. Next, what I can do is go back to my data labels. I can go back into my label options here, and this time I'm going to tell it to use values from the cells. So I choose that option and it says select the data label range. So where is the data coming from for that label? And it's going to come from the total column there. So when I hit OK, we get this. So what it's now doing is showing us the figure from that column there for the total and the value itself. And if I exclude that, we have now got our stacked column chart that is only showing us the total figures on our data labels. So that is really a little trick that you can use with your data labels. If the thing you want to display on your chart isn't given to you by default, use the option that says value from cells. Right, let us move on then. Let's move away from our data labels. What we have got next is the legend. Now, the legend is the colour-coded key that we've seen before that tells you what each visual element relates to. So in the pie chart example, it tells us that dark blue relates to cola. With your legend, you can do things like change its position, so move it to the right, for example, or top right, things like that. You can also get rid of it completely if you want to. What I would say, though, is that you need something on your chart, whether it's your data labels or the legend, that tells you what each thing relates to. In this example, if I got rid of my legend, I wouldn't be able to tell that cola was the dark blue slice there unless I added it to my data labels. So just take that into account. Now, something else that we can do is, let's just imagine that, let me pull back my original column chart like this actually. Let's imagine that we have got our column chart here and it's positioned away from the original data. And what we might want to see is that table appearing on the chart itself. Well, if you want to do that, you can add a data table to your chart. So we go to Chart Design, Add Chart Element, and then we can choose a data table like so. So what that will do is add that little table below your columns that puts in your data. And if I go back over to my main column chart, the clustered one with the different items, which is hiding here somewhere, if I just move everything out to the way like that, and if I get rid of my total column like so, so we're back to how we were, what could be quite useful here is if again I add in my data table. So I'll go to Design, Add Chart Element, put in a data table like that. Now, something else that we can play with the chart's elements is the actual data series itself. So the actual visual elements that make up your chart. Now, you can do various different things with these depending on the type of chart you're dealing with. With a column chart, for instance, if we click on one of the data series, so one of the columns, and go into our options over here, you'll see that we've got series overlap and also gap width. Now, what series overlap will do is it will control how close together the columns are within each cluster, so within each item. So notice that when I move this, that we've got the columns backing away from one another and then getting closer together like so. We've then got the gap width that we can play with, and that changes the gap between the different items. So if I make that gap lower, can you see that it is making the columns wider like that? And if I increase the gap, then it's making the columns narrower like so. Now, we can also do things like, if you have got a line chart, and let me just find my original one. If I can grab hold of it, there we go. Just rearranging all of my charts like this. Where you have got a line chart, you can do things like make sure that it has got a smooth line, for instance, so we can just smooth out a line like that. You can put arrows on it as well and change the type of the line if you want to. Now, there's also lots of things that you can do with the pie chart. For instance, if I click on my pie slices like that, the data series, then we can see that we've got a couple of options. angle of first slice and pie explosion, which sounds very exciting, doesn't it? Angle of a first slice will effectively spin your pie chart around. So if I increase that, then can you notice we've got our little pie chart spinning about like that? So that might be something else that you want to do if you want to effectively change where your pie chart begins. Then for our pie explosion, if I increase that, we get this. So all of your slices get pulled away from each other like so. In general, I would say keep your pie explosions to a minimum, because if they become too big, then your pie chart will sort of lose a bit of meaning, won't it? What you could also do, though, is just explode a single slice. To do this, you select a single slice, and then you can pull it out like that. So that's quite useful if you want to draw attention to one particular item. Now I'm going to bring up the donut chart that we saw before, because there are a couple of extra things we can do with that. If I go in to my data series like that, so I choose my donut slices, you can see that once again we've got the angle of first slice option there. We've also got a donut explosion. In general, I don't advise that you explode your donut because it looks really weird. You get things like this appearing and you just think, oh, why? What does that mean? So it's keeping the actual shape but just moving them further apart. I'm not entirely sure what that brings to the party, so I think we'll just pretend that never happened and take our explosion back down to 0%. The other thing we've got, though, is the donut hole size. That relates to that hole in the middle. So if I make that hole size smaller, we get quite a small hole. And if I increase it, then our donut becomes skinny like that. So you can play about with that sort of thing. Now, the other thing that we have got, can you remember when I was talking about the pie charts and I mentioned that there were these things called pie of pie charts? Well, this is the point when we're going to look at them, because it's really the data series that affects how they appear. So I've selected my data. I'm going to go to Insert, the pie chart section, and I'm going to choose the pie of pie, like so. So what your pie of pie chart gives you is effectively two pies on a single chart. You've basically got a couple of the items, and you can affect how many, appearing on the secondary chart so that they are then combined into a single slice on your main chart. If I add percentages to this, by choosing my trusty style 11 like that, you can see that on the second chart it's chosen to put soup there that has 32%, salad of 13%, and that gives us a total for those of 45%. Now, to change what actually appears on that second chart, you select the data series like that. You then go over to your properties, and we've got the option over there that says split series by. Now, what can be quite useful is if you say split that not by position, but by something like value. So what we can do is say that we want values that are less than 100 to appear on the second chart. So if I hit return, we get this. So when you use a pie of pie chart in that way, it gives you quite a neat way of drilling into some of the smaller slices that may perhaps be a little bit, well, that may be a little less visible than if they were just on the main chart. And we can see, for instance, that for our values that are less than 100, so cola and coffee, that takes up 11% of that total. Right, I think for now we've covered quite a lot of the different chart elements. I think before we go any further, we'll just review that and have an exercise. So I'll stop sharing my screen. We'll go over to the slide window. And the first thing that we looked at was the chart area. And we saw that this was the box that goes all the way around the entire chart and contains all of its elements. You can do things like change the background or border, but you can also control whether the chart can move or resize with other cells. It's a pretty useful thing as well if you want to change the fonts and text styles used in the chart, because applying them to the chart area will affect them chart-wide. Next, we've got the plot area, which is the area that contains the actual chart itself, and it's rectangular even for pie charts. And then we've got the chart title, and you can just change the default chart title that Excel gives you. If you don't have a chart title, or you get rid of it and want to add it again, you can add any items by going to the Add Chart Element option, and that will give you a list of elements that can be added for the type of chart that you have. Next, we have got the data labels, which give you information about each of the data points. And for these, you can specify what information gets displayed. So for pie charts, for instance, you may want to display percentages, you may want to display values, and perhaps the item names. We've then got the legend, which is the colour-coded key. We've got the data table, which is a little table that gives the original data values that can be displayed in the chart area. This is particularly useful if you have got a chart that is away from its original data. Then we have got the data series. The data series is one of the most useful things, I would say, because you can use it to affect the chart's visual elements. So things like the chart's columns, the pie slices, the lines, things like that. It's also useful because when you want to use something like a pie chart, you can affect what elements go on that second pie by affecting the data series. So, speaking of pie charts, it's time for another exercise. We've got there some more data, and what I'd like you to do this time is use the data to create a pie chart that displays values less than 300 on the second pie. I'd then like you to add data labels to the chart to display percentages, and I would like to know from that what percentage of the overall total is made up of amounts less than 300. So try that out. When you've got the answer, please drop it into the group chat. I'll switch off my mic to let you get on with that in peace, and let's say 3 or 4 minutes, and then after that time, I'll come back with a solution.